All right, Coach. Hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Appreciate you taking the time. Thankful that you came on. I know I mentioned to you that I had spoken with Rosie Hayes, who is the head women's coach at Newman University, who is at Cobleskill, right?
Yeah, Cobleskill.
Cobleskill, who previously, and she made a comment that stuck into my head of something like farm strong or something along the line. So I'm like, I totally got to tune in to you guys, and that's why I reached out. But thank you very much for taking the time today.
I appreciate you having me on.
So, if I read this right, I guess this season will be your 6th season at Cobleskill? 5th?
It's hard with the COVID year in there. I think this is the 7th season, started the 8th year. I could be a little off. My first fall was 2015.
Oh, very good. Very good. So maybe we could just start. What's your soccer journey been like? How did you end up at Cobleskill? Yeah.
So, played my whole life. I grew up in downstate New York, from Yonkers. Played on a variety of the clubs there. Didn't have kind of the structure that exists now with all the pathways that have really developed. Got hurt right before senior year in high school, kind of changed direction with where I was doing my college search a little bit. I'd been looking kind of D1 and then kind of took a step back, stopped playing, didn't play for a couple years, and then I found a D3 school. Had a great experience. I loved it. And I'd kind of always been around soccer and started to just really get into the coaching, started to do high school. Then I got lucky enough to get an opportunity to work with this program at St. John's. A couple years after that, moved on to Ohio Wesleyan. I was an assistant coach there. Was there for 2 great years. Got a lot of great knowledge from Jay, and got lucky enough to get this opportunity at SUNY Cobleskill. Brought me back to New York. Growing up here and just knowing the game around the state, knew it would be a great place to kind of build a program that really hadn't had much of a history, and it was, I kind of haven't looked back since, and I've been here and just been building our program through the ups and downs that, have gone on for everyone over the last few years.
Yeah. So did you play D3?
Yeah, I played at the College of Mount St. Vincent.
Oh yeah. Okay, all right, very familiar. Yeah, because it says okay.
Wish that we had that new field that they have there, and some of the great things. I've got to get back. We went down and played there a couple years ago, right when they first put the facility in. But I played 3 years there.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. This is interesting. Yonkers, like, holy smokes! talk about a difference. And Ohio Wesleyan. I didn't know you had worked with Jay, who I gotta believe that was just like being in a classroom every day.
Every day, just trying to pick, just be a sponge and pick something up.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. This has been in my craw for a little bit now, and I've been asking it more and more. Do you see regional differences between players? Like, you're now in I'll just say you're upper state New York, and it's kind of mid-state New York, but whatever.
Yeah.
Do you see, or out towards the west? Do you see players? Do they play different in that area versus, I don't know? You come out back to Yonkers and you watch players there, or, on the coast. Curious.
Yeah, there's certainly differences. There's definitely similarities across the game. I mean, maybe look a little more at regional differences across like bigger parts of the country. But I mean, certainly it's why we recruit all over New York State. I mean, if we could get a little bit of everything in our area, we'd probably never have to leave the county, the Albany area. But, I mean, certainly downstate, you see that maybe there's a little bit more technique, a little bit more of that flair. That go right back to that farm tough. Maybe up around school here, we get a little more of that bigger, faster, stronger, maybe someone who can play more direct. And then, as we're looking through everything, certainly you see in different areas there's different pockets that maybe there's players downstate that play that bigger, physical, more direct style. So, I mean, it's certainly something that's based, I think, on the high school, the coach, if they play club, the influences that has on them, even where the club goes and plays. Certainly the exposure that players get can add different parts to their game or cause them to work on something else. So there are definitely differences, but at some point, it's a great state for soccer. The region's great in general, and typically most of our players come from the state, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But we can get a wide range of skills and technical skill sets just in New York.
Yeah. Look, I would say if you're up here, it's not like you need a national footprint to recruit good players. Like there's just New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, like just those 4 states. You could Massachusetts if you can get up there, like the amount of players that are available to you. I mean, it's always surprises me the level of talent. So, hey, maybe you could talk a little bit about the North Atlantic Conference that you participate in.
This fall going in is our 3rd season participating in the NAC. It's kind of spread out across New York State, New England. Because of that, it's set up in East-West, kind of divisionally. We're in a division with a few other SUNY schools. Unfortunately, Casanova just closed. School in Vermont, school in Massachusetts. There's some changes going on within the league, because of schools closing, and there's some schools coming in. So, the schedule is kind of designed to limit a little bit of the travel. We're not going to Maine every weekend, but we get a great trip up to Maine every fall, which the guys really enjoy. The biggest thing for us is, it's something that we think we can be competitive in. I think if you look at our season from the last fall, it's not a great season in terms of win-loss record overall, but we were able to find games and, be competitive in them that gave our team something to hang on to all season long, even though we didn't win a game until the second to last week of October. So it's something that, it's the schools are good teams and they're similar to us. So, it's a really good setting for us to compete in for all of our sports.
It's funny because one of the things I have on your schedule, it's not the win-loss wise, not that I really care, but I always look at the 1-goal games, right? And you had 6 1-goal games, right? Like you turn those. I always say if you get on the right end of that scoreboard, you now are at 8, 9, and 2, which is a big difference from where, right? So to me, it's always like, how close are you? If you're getting blown out every game, you're not close. But to me, I look at your record and I think that you're a lot closer than probably what your record shows, right? So again, and not having seen or followed or up until conversations today, and then with Coach K's at Newman, but. And I know Casanova, what a shame, right? But you do play another one of my favorites at SUNY Canton. Interestingly enough, Coach Penrod. What a great guy.
Coach Penrod's my buddy.
So let me ask you, and I'm always curious to this, and I mean, there's always the talk about public versus private and stuff like that. And I know the SUNYs are unique in their own right, like there's. But I'm just curious, like how big of a deal does team culture? How big of a deal is it for you in the context of where you're at, and especially coming from? Again, now coming from Ohio Wesleyan, where team culture is it supersedes just about everything else, right? And so I'm just curious how much of that translates for you at SUNY.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I can say it might be the biggest thing for us. I mean, we're not going to get the best players in every recruiting process. We don't get the same players that Ohio Wesleyan does. So having the culture that's something the team that can always go back to for why we're doing what we're doing, why we're together, what drives us forward, is what can sustain you through a season where you win 2 games, arguably. It's something that takes lots of work. I mean, our team was really young the last couple of years, and we try to make sure that the culture is something that we're working on every day. There's a few key values that we always look at, and we want our players to, believe in and exhibit, whether it's in the classroom, on the field, in the dorms, it doesn't matter. It's about who you are as a person, trying to get better every day. We're brothers. We're in a small rural community in upstate New York. It's beautiful. There's forests and hills everywhere. But our team's together all the time. We're a family. And, if we didn't have that, arguably we couldn't achieve what we wanted to on the field. So it's something that, we continue to work on throughout the entire year. It's not just a fall thing either.
I was just looking at your roster. Am I seeing this correctly? You only have 3 seniors? Or I guess 3 seniors that are graduating?
Yeah, last fall we had, I think it was 4 seniors. One of them graduated in December, our goalkeeper. So we didn't have a goalkeeper this spring, which presents a lot of unique challenges. He did a great job graduating early. We lost 2 this spring, and then Tanner on the roster has decided to come back for his 5th year. Who's the first player who's done that in our program. So
wow,
yeah,
so you are young. I mean, the number of the number of freshmen and sophomores you have is, it's sizable. It's the majority of your roster.
Yeah, and it's something that we're looking to grow, and that's where you have your bumps and growing pains. But that's why we look to the end of the season and how we finished versus what the entire scope of the year was. We want to focus on when we really started performing well and give them something to grow on and build off of this entire off season, and we'll see the results of that in the fall.
And I'm looking at this. Can you just talk about sort of where it's not the, I don't know if this is a way to phrase it, but where do you find your players? Like, what types of players, I'll just say student athletes, would be like, hey, Cobleskill is a place for me? So, I'm curious again, like that's just more me thing than.
It's a wide range. I mean, we offer over 40 academic programs. We do have some that are a little more specialized, which typically draw people to Cobleskill initially. Some that are more based in your, agricultural sciences, plant sciences, environmental fields. Our fisheries and wildlife program is excellent. We have a canine program that's one of the only ones in the country right now. So we've been drawing a lot in those programs, which are really unique. Students have to want to be at Cobleskill at some point. Yeah. It's hands-on learning in a lot of those fields, but you might get to be in a class with a dog your first week on campus as a freshman. So we get a lot of those kind of draws, but at the same time, we go out and we look for the best players we can possibly get. We're going to try to compete for someone that has a business major and show them the pathways that we provide to different programs, and we have graphic design. So, we have a lot of things that people think, okay, it's upstate New York, you can go be outside and plants and animals. And we have a farm on campus, which is great. Provides pathways for our veterinary program and going to vet school. So we get a lot of those kind of draws. So it's kind of a mix. I reach out to players reach out to me. We always go through a full recruiting process with everyone and do our follow-up. But it's something that's really unique and really cool, and has kind of kept me here the longer that I've been at Cobleskill, and getting to see the kind of academic growth that our students have that might be different than your other SUNY or a private school.
Yeah, I know the SUNY is sort of, I don't know if it's, but when they first started, they were like these nodes of learning for specifics, right? Like, so Canton is going to be different than Cobleskill, which is different than New Delhi, right? They all sort
Yeah.
of, their main concentration was always a little different. I think that's all expanded now but yeah. So I was curious, and actually, I'm gonna, I'm gonna actually get out to you guys at some point.
You got a couple opponents we
Yeah.
could match up with too. That you could see a couple coaches at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm totally interested. I'm totally game. Simple player number 2 is headed to RPI,
Oh, nice.
and I think if I did my maps right, like I mean you're west, but you're only like 45 minutes to an hour west of
Yeah, it's not
Troy.
a bad trip
Yeah,
to Troy. We don't play RPI.
yeah,
We haven't in the past, but I mean, we play plenty of schools out towards
yeah, yeah,
Albany.
yeah, yeah. So that's why I said at some point, I'm gonna do a trek. Well, that's what I always end up doing wherever I am. I try to get out and hit some schools to visit. Okay, so let's talk about Farm Strong. Is that a thing? Is that a thing? Like, do you like? I don't want to say internalize it, but I mean, is that really a thing that you guys sort of hang your hats on?
I mean, it depends on the player at some
You're
point.
right.
I mean,
Right.
we do certainly get that player that has grown up on a farm. And I think the word that a lot of people look at these days is grit. You know, how do you handle tough situations, that you're going to see in life on the field? What happens when you go down a goal? We've got one of our players who his family owns a farm that's 1,000 acres, and he helps manage and run it. So there's a tough about him that's more than just physical at some point.
Yeah.
And that's really where we look at it a little more. Certainly you'll see your 5'7", 135-pound kid, but he could toss a 65-pound hay bale over his head. You get your farm tough that way too.
Yeah.
How that translates onto the field is something that we try to not push, but how does it help us if that's part of you? I'd say if we were going to put 11 players that was just who they are out on the field, we probably couldn't get the product of soccer that we want to get at the end of the day, because big and fast and strong might not be as technical at that point. So we try to balance everything, and that's where we look in the recruiting process. Kind of go back to your question about regionally. Maybe some of the guys we get from a little more local have that farm tough, but then we'll go get kid who's New York City tough or Long Island tough or way upstate New York. And there's different kinds of it that, when we've had our best teams and our best records, you can look at our roster and see that we've got a little bit of everything there.
Everything. Yeah. I just love the whole idea of it, right? To me, okay, and I don't know any. I'm New Jersey, so the closest thing I get to a farm is when I go to the supermarket and it says "Farm Fresh" on whatever the stuff is. Like. I've always, there's something to be said about folks who have to get up at 4 a.m. and get right to it. Like they don't have, like life doesn't stop. They don't go on vacation. Like it just
Exactly.
Like there's a reality. It's 7 days a week. You got animals that depend on you, and you depend on them. And anyhow, I love that. I love the whole notion of that. Again, to my thinking. Right, there's like, how do you capture? We're such a big country. I always think like we're such a big country, right? Like, there's got to be flavors of players that because of where they are, where they're from. Like, and I just love the idea of capturing that. So, anyhow, all right. Let me just ask you, like, just give me an overall assessment of how you think your season went. I know we talked about. The 6-1 goal games, but if you were on the right side of I'll just say your season looks dramatically different than what the record your record showed. But yeah, maybe you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, knowing we were going to have such a young team coming into the fall, we knew there was going to be bumps and bruises along the way. So we just tried to make sure throughout the course of the year that we always had something that we were working towards and something that was achievable. I mean, there was a point where you look at our schedule and we hadn't won a game at all. I mean, going back to middle of October, hadn't scored too many goals either. So just trying to make sure in training every day that the guys were having fun and everyone still wanted to be out there because you could look at that record and say, okay, well, coach, what are we going to do? We haven't won a game. We can't. So that's why the way our league was set up and having a divisional playoff system, we had games on our schedule that we knew, hey, guys, if we win these games, we still have a chance. So that really kept a goal in mind. And that was the biggest thing for us is, just building towards something and trying to get better every day. We wanted to make sure that peaking happened towards the end of the season. And, our peaking looks very different than what a lot of other teams did last season. But for us, we might have played our best soccer at the end of the season. We scored half our goals in the last couple of games. We managed to get into the conference playoffs, playing against the number 1 seed at their place. There was a point in the second half where we were 2-1 down and hit the crossbar, and it would have been 2-2, and then who knows what could have happened. So, we just tried to make sure that we kept being positive all season, and looking back and reflecting on it, it might be one of the better things that could have happened to us. If we won a few more of those 1-goal games, I don't know if our team would have worked as hard as they did in the offseason. Freshmen coming in this fall are excited because they know they have an opportunity to come in and potentially compete for a spot right away because the results weren't that great last fall. Yeah. So it's a new team, and we're looking forward to building off of that because failing helped a lot of our players in a big way because it's not something that maybe they'd done in the past. So there are a lot of good lessons and growing moments and teachable moments within the fall. Yeah, we would have loved to have won more games and gone farther. But in terms of just their growth as young men, for a lot of them, it was a really big year and taking a step forward that I'm excited to see how that goes into next fall with a new group.
Yeah. Look, that's a great point you make. Like, let's say you are on the right side of those of those scoreboards of 6 games. That's a dramatically different season for you, and does it lead your guys to sort of be hungry or as hungry to do what they need to do to be ready for next season? And that's a great question because the motivation is pretty clear, right? You go, whatever it was, 2-15, 2-3, like that'll motivate a lot of players to be like, it's again, and knowing how close you were. Like I said, I don't think it was too outlandish looking at some of these scores that you couldn't have been on, the better side of, just by nature of it. And right, you just need those couple games to get some momentum. And so if you had the early games, I mean, your first 2 games, you lose 1-0, 1-goal games. What if you're 2-0 at that point?
Like, I think just sort of goals were set pieces too.
Yeah,
so.
and you just sort of build that momentum, and hey, suddenly you start to feel good, and things start to fall your way a little bit.
Yeah, and I think at that point that puts us 0-2 going into Vassar, who's a regionally ranked opponent, which we try to play teams like that because we might lose that game, but we need to see a better team and a better opponent because we're never going to improve ourselves if we don't put our team up against those kind of opposition.
Iron sharpens iron. It's the only way. You're never going to amount to any. I don't know, say that it's not the right way to say it, but you're never going to be a team, an elite team, if you're not playing elite teams. It's just the nature of the beast, and as best you can, right? I mean, understanding conference and all that stuff. Like, was there anything in particular that you found, aside from forget the record and stuff? Was there any sort of challenges that you dealt with that were particularly interesting to you? Like, why, again, you're dealing with 20, 30 kids of 17, 18, 19-year-olds. So I'm sure there were challenges, but I'm just curious, did you deal with anything in particular that stands out?
I think in particular for last fall, it was trying to help our older leaders because they were the ones that were affected during that COVID time period. Our seniors this past fall were the ones that were freshmen and lost that transition into the spring season and transition of leadership when the seniors leave, and kind of struggled in a lot of ways to be that older player that takes care of the whole group. Not that it's just on the captains or the leaders of the team, but definitely there was a piece missing. So we had to do a lot of work on that with them of, how to be a better leader, how to talk to your teammates, how to reach out to someone who might be in trouble, whether it's in the classroom or maybe they're just having a hard time adjusting to college. So that's something that I'm sure you could do a study on it across the country in all the programs. We lost 15 upperclassmen during COVID. And, we came back to a world where we had 11 players, and I don't know if we had any seniors at that point.
Yeah.
So kind of that, like, who our leaders were and passing that down didn't really happen. So working with the older players to kind of be that person. And, it's tough. Not everybody excels as I'm an outspoken person and I'm going to be able to do that. Nowadays, maybe it's more, I need to put a hand around your shoulder and go aside and talk to you. So, that piece was something that, was big. We're going to be very intentional about how we handle that in the fall and, work our new group coming into the group, because that's such a big piece that goes right into the culture that, hey, it happened to everyone, but certainly there are challenges it presents, and these are young people growing up that sometimes we forget because we're in a world of sport and you're winning and losing games that we're trying to develop them as humans too, and they missed a piece there. So that was big for us. That we want to make sure the further away we are from it, it's just something that's a built-in piece to our culture and how we handle things.
It's funny that you just mentioned the whole COVID thing and the impact on players. So my simple player number 2 graduated yesterday from high school, and we were talking about, even as seniors graduating from high school and going, there's a difference between what we've seen in the past of my older son, sort of the impact of COVID, and like there's this gap in a year gap and just sort of developing and friends and all that kind of stuff that you forget is such a significant impact on these student athletes and having to deal with that over time. I mean, and we're going to deal with it for a long time, right? I hate to say it, but
100%. I mean, we want things to be player-led at some point.
Yeah.
And, that was part of why we weren't together. So that was hard to do. And, at some point it seemed like a lot of the players were looking to the coaching staff for that, which was a little different for us and, caused us to kind of change the way that maybe we did some things because the students are always changing. The players are always changing. And we've got to adjust our ways and adapt. Otherwise, we're going to get left behind in just simply dealing with the relationships we have to.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just curious. You had 2 ties. Like, do you have a thought on, do you like not having to go to overtime, or would you have preferred to, bludgeon it out for 20 minutes to find a winner?
So one of those ties was, I think it was called 'Cause of Light. So that one's a tough one. In terms of the regular season, I don't really mind it. With the way our conference is set up, that certainly impacts my thought on it because we do play back-to-backs. So, we've had weekends in the past where we played 220 minutes of soccer because we had 2, overtime games and, back to back, and then you're talking about student athletes who have to recover and go to class during the week. So part of me doesn't like it, though, because at the end of the day, you want to come to a winner and loser. And sometimes those games that you lose, I mean, we had one 2 years ago against SUNY Canton. We lost 2-1 in overtime at home, and I think I looked at my assistant coach after the game and said, none of these guys have ever played a game in overtime before.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how to handle it because that's it. It's over. And they're looking around like, okay, what happens next? And, you know, sometimes you need that experience to build on. So, you know, for travel and those kind of reasons, definitely helpful. But the competitor in me always wants to be put in a position where, okay, we can go further. You know, we can, even if we lose. I think my players would say, like, we're going to go for it. Yeah, we might lose a game because we tried to win.
I didn't realize, I just looked at your schedule. I'm looking at your schedule, and I didn't realize you do the back-to-backs, right? You'll do like a Saturday, Sunday away trip, right? Like I'm just looking at University of Maine, Presque Isle, and Houston.
Yeah, that was a long one.
Yeah, Maine. I mean, this is your Maine weekend, which is probably awesome, the end of September, but I mean, that's a lot. That takes a lot. So yeah, I didn't even realize that. I thought you were a little bit more spread out. But anyhow, hey, what did you do? What was sort of your intent for the spring? Like, what were you trying to? Were there things that you were trying to accomplish? Again, I would say good teams are very intentional with their spring and sort of how that leads to their fall. And so I was just curious, sort of what were the things that you focused in on and tried to get better at?
So we wanted to make sure that this spring we kind of just got back to basics. We needed the players to kind of take a reset from the fall because obviously record wasn't great, and just kind of focus in on how do we get better individually and then how do we translate that into getting better as a group. And we just wanted to make sure that every day we got out, we had a good session. Because our numbers weren't great, you know, with the seniors gone, and, you know, we had some injuries that took a role in people not being able to participate and things like that. So, you know, we didn't get to the point where we could play a game. So we knew all our competition was just going to be internal every day. So, you know, when we played in-house, can you be competitive? Can you be passionate about what's going on the field? And we think that we've got a great foundation set because we do need the help of the freshmen in the fall. You know, they've got to come in, and whether it's to have an opportunity to earn a spot or push a player that's in the same spot as them to be better and be their best. So we really wanted to put that framework in of just what are the standards of our program, what do we do in training every day, what are the things that we do on the field, and just kind of get back to, okay, what do you have to do technically to be able to play in the style of play that we want to play?
All right, so I'm going to ask you, I got a couple more questions and I'll let you get on with your day. What does again, you have a super young team, which is awesome in a lot of respects. I love the young teams that are finding their way, and I keep, you know, this is the way I am. I just think, oh man, 2 years down the road, you could have a banger of a team because these guys carry this toil and the scars of past battles, and that they're going in strong and tough, and they know what to expect in all situations. But what does your current recruiting class look like? Is it done? Are you, or is it always open? I'm just curious.
I mean, I'd say we're done right now, but I mean, if I can find a good player who's going to fill a role for us, I'm going to explore every opportunity up until the point where I can't get them into school. It's one of the nice things about being a SUNY with rolling admission. You know, we do tend to get some players a little later on in the process. Some of the best players we've ever had here are guys we've picked up in July and August. I mean, we had a goalkeeper a few years ago who didn't qualify as a Division I player and had a connection and came up here and, had a great season, and then COVID happened, and, that's a story for another time. But, right now we're at 29 with maybe a 30th. Got to have another conversation or two with the last player and just make sure all the right fits are there on both ends. We're happy with that number. Beyond 30 gets to be too many to manage, but we knew we needed a goalkeeper in this class, so we got a few coming in.
Nice.
Just graduating one, and can't have one goalkeeper in house. It's not a good world to be in. And we do have some of those local farm tough guys coming in. Definitely something that our team needed a little more of right now. But I think we've got 15 guys coming in. Did have a little bit of roster turnover. Standards are hard for people to meet sometimes. So, especially in Division III, the world we're in, there's transfers, there's things like that. So, we need those guys to come in and be competitors right away. So we're happy with the group that we have, but if we can pick up someone who's going to help our program, we're certainly going to look into it.
Are transfers a part of your world? Meaning, whether you're pursuing them or does Cobleskill lend itself to transfers for either whether they're 50 years or whatever their previous didn't pan out?
So we don't have any graduate programs, unfortunately. So we don't have any of the 50 years coming in for transfer, but being a part of the SUNY system, that's something that we do see, whether it's a junior college transfer coming in for their last 2 or 3 years. We do have sometimes transfers out, just closer to home, financial, major change. Things happen. Again, they're young men. They're changing their minds, finding who they are. So we have a couple every year that we see. Some of our programs are still 2-year programs because we've, since the early 2010s, been a 4-year school, so we do have a lot of great 2-year programs. Sometimes we get a guy that really wants one of those. We're not going to say no if he's going to help our team. We'll try to get him to stay for 4, but we've got plenty that do 2 and transfer for something else, or maybe they go to work and life or back to the farm or whatever it is. So especially with the transfer portal and all of that nowadays, we do see it a little more. Even just more of guys exploring what the possibility is. I know one of our seniors who had a year had a couple conversations and put himself in, and we talked about it, and he just said, "Hey, coach, I want to see what happens." And I said, "Hey, go for it. What if someone offers you an opportunity and you get a whole new experience?"
Yeah. Especially the way the grad school things work, you could set yourself in a position where you get to play, and then you get to coach, and you get everything. You get your world paid for that education. So I totally buy into it under those circumstances. I was just curious, and it's never been an issue until it's become an issue, right? Like the amount of transfers and all that stuff, good, bad, and different. It's just the reality that I think we deal with. But all right, so. Last question for you, and remember this is recorded, so I don't want you to become like the motivational board topic for another school, but what sort of, can you share any goals that you might have outlined for this fall? Could probably guess, but yeah.
Certainly a goal that we have is just to be competitive every game. That's one of the goals that I have next fall, even just personally, because, you can look at schedule last year. We had a couple of games that just got away from us, and that's not something that even a young team that's going to progress should be doing. So, just kind of tighten up some of those matches, be better defensively is a big thing for me. We gave up far too many goals last year, and if we can do that, I think that scoring more will come. I mean, I never typically put we're going to win this many games. We're going to beat this opponent. We're going to make it this far, because you can't control that. And I'd love to say we're going to go out there and win the conference, but we have to do a lot of things along the way to get to that point. So, just try to be better every day. I mean, a big thing for me as a coach is, can we have the culture and standards that our players need to have to be successful, at least instilled in them, in the first couple of days, so everybody knows what we stand for and what we're all working towards. And that's something that we try to do every year, but that's just a goal of mine, because that's what we're going to build off of for the rest of the year.
All right, 2 last comments and I'll let you go. First of all, yeah, I was looking, I mean, your schedule there, but I mean, the games that got away from you, I'd probably argue that,
Yeah.
like, they weren't, it wasn't like you stumbled on somebody that you, under normal circumstances, I mean, disrespectfully, like, that you should have beaten. Like, these are, I mean, it's hard not to let Vassar score, especially at
Yeah.
that level, right? Like, just but I get it. Like I said, you're not far for as young as you are. I don't. If I were on staff, I'd be like, we are close. Yeah, you got to deal with the Husons and the Vassars, and you got to get better against Canton. That was probably the one that shines to me the biggest, right? Like, that's the one where I'm like, that one doesn't make sense to me. But I'm like, we're so close, right? Get a little bit more experience. You know what everybody's about. I mean, you could easily, like I said, you could easily have a winning record. Not easily, but with the work and the right dedication, I think you guys a winning record and getting further in the conference tournament. I don't think that's beyond. But I'm always tend to be on the more aggressive side of that sort of thing, right? Like, and again, it's easy for me sitting at SimpleCoach HQ rather than on
But
the
you're right, though.
sidelines.
We've got to go out there and attack it if we're gonna get better. If we don't, and we're just kind
Totally.
of hoping for it to happen, it's not going
Yeah.
to, and that's
It's not.
why.
No, totally. Yeah. It is not. No, none of these teams are going to give it to you. Like, they're
Yeah.
not. Hey, Cobleskill showing up. We're playing. Let's give it to them. That's not happening. I hate to. If it were that easy, right? Like, everyone would be Jose Mourinho, right? So, and then lastly, I do have to comment because it is probably, and I'm going to put a picture either in over us or something. I mean, your field is probably one of the prettiest fields, all grass,
Oh yeah.
legit stands. Like, it's not like, hey, we're throwing some bleachers on the grass. No, legit stands, press box. Like, it's probably one of the prettiest, nicest looking fields in Division Three.
I love our field. It's especially in the fall when the leaves are changing. You've got the
Yeah.
hills in the
Hills
background
in the
and the
background. I was
colors.
thinking the same. Yeah.
There's a beautiful
The
creek right near the field. I mean, campus is
yeah.
gorgeous. And then,
Yeah.
I love having a grass soccer field. For
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
soccer
Thank
should be
you.
played on grass. It's how
Yeah.
I grew up. It's nicer than most of the grass fields I grew up playing on. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
academically, we have programs that our plant science majors work on our field, and, we make it
Yeah.
a learning experience too. So it's a
It,
great setting for students to come play.
I think the cool thing is that it's a legit soccer field because it's not like cut into, hey, we're just going to drop a soccer field here on this pasture. It's legit. Like, to me, it looks. I mean, that's picture perfect grass field, like flat. Well, man. Anyhow, I geek out on these fields things, and why can't the University of Mount Union have something similar for its for its soccer field? I don't know, but they're either going to listen to me or they're going to hate me. So I keep railing. Anyhow, that's my soapbox for the day. I'm done. Coach, thank you for this. I really, seriously, I'm going to get up there this fall since I'll be in the vicinity. But I do appreciate you taking the time. I wish you and your men the best of luck, and I'll definitely be following and cheering you guys on from afar.
I really appreciate you having me on and an opportunity to have a great conversation about our program and just college soccer in general. It's something, we spend lots of time doing and been enjoying your channel, so we appreciate it.
Thank you. I can totally geek out on this sort of stuff. Like I know. Unfortunately, I got like I said, a regular job. Hopefully, my boss doesn't watch the channel, even though he knows it's out there, to know when I'm doing these interviews. But anyhow, thank you very much. I'll be in touch. Maybe in the just before the season or just during preseason, if you have some time, we can do a catch up and see where you're at and see how things are turning out for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.